The air crackled between us, charged with the kind of silence that screams louder than any fight. Her words, when they finally came, weren't an explosion. They were the slow, steady drip of water carving out a canyon. "I'm leaving." Her farewell crushed me. I've been a fool, so blindsided by the ordinary, I hadn't seen the fault lines widening beneath our feet. Now, the whole damn world was collapsing around me. Hours later, the house is a tomb. I move like a ghost, tidying without purpose. There's her hairbrush tangled on the bathroom floor, and beside it, the ghost of her perfume hangs thick. It triggers a flashback. The wine bottle, half empty, shared on a night that felt just like any other. We were laughing, or at least I was. Had she already checked out by then? Each item I pick up is a landmine, detonating memories I thought were safely buried. On the bedside table lies the note, not some desperate love letter, no tear-stained plea to fix things. Just instructions, bank accounts, the lawyer's number, a damn to-do list for ending our marriage. I crumple it, a knot of fury rising in my gut. Then, I panic, smoothing the paper. Am I grasping at straws, searching for some sign she didn't mean it? The slam of her suitcase had been the death knell, her back rigid, eyes refusing to meet mine, not a single hesitation, so focused on getting the hell out, did I even flicker in her rearview mirror as she drove away? That damn taxi, a bright yellow stain on an otherwise gray day. It pulled up like the Grim Reaper's chariot, and she didn't even look back as she climbed inside. I stood there, frozen, watching it dwindle away. Only then could I breathe, a ragged gasp like a man pulled from the wreckage. This can't be it, can it? I'd give anything to rewind, to fix, what, exactly? When did it all go wrong? Where did I lose her? But there are no answers, just a house thick with her absence, and me, standing in the rubble of what we used to be. My phone buzzed against my thigh, a lifeline in the suffocating quiet. 2 words, house tonight. Flashed on screen, Sarah. It had been too long since we'd talked, too long since her easy smile and the way her eyes seemed to understand when mine wouldn't. An ache of something more than loneliness bloomed in my chest. My fingers hesitated over the reply, then moved with a reckless determination. Lonely, I typed, then added, wife's out of town. Subtle enough, a test. If Sarah was still on the sidelines, waiting for a sign, it was there to be taken. I needed a distraction, desperately. The play tickets, bought weeks ago, sat on my desk. A testament to better times or pathetic optimism, depending on your perspective. The anniversary they were meant for was now just another hollow date on the calendar. But I wasn't throwing the night away. I texted Sarah, the words a mix of excitement and a sharp twist of guilt I didn't want to examine too closely. Change of plans, play instead, my treat. That night, over shared appetizers and stolen glances, I found refuge in Sarah's company. I played the disgruntled husband, venting about spreadsheets and clueless clients, a watered-down version of the frustrations choking me. She listened, a sympathetic crease between her brows, but I could tell she sensed something was off-kilter. Our history gave her that X-ray vision. Back home later, the silence had gained teeth. I stumbled through the darkness, half hoping my phone would glow with a concerned text from my wife. Instead, a faint sound from the living room sent a jolt through me. My wife, on the phone. Her laughter floated down the hall. It was a familiar sound, one that used to fill the house like sunshine. Yet now, it was tight, wound up, with a brittle edge that set my teeth on edge. I strained to hear the other voice, but it was too muffled. Who was she talking to? What was she laughing about? I retreated, guilt and suspicion gnawing at me like twin rats. The play, Sarah's knowing eyes, was I returning the favor that had been extended to me? The echo of her laugh lingered in the empty room, chasing me down the hall. That wasn't the laugh of a wife on a casual call. Her voice, so warm for someone else, turned icy whenever she looked at me. Then I heard it. Muffled, but a word like a knife cut through the strained melody of her voice. Project. My project. That spreadsheet-ridden obsession with fixing up the old lake cabin. She used to tease me about it, but affectionately. Now, her tone dripped with venom. The phone call ended abruptly, and I held my breath, some desperate part of me wishing she'd come searching. I didn't want to be this guy. The paranoid, jealous husband. But then, she'd never given me reason to doubt her before, until now. Her phone lay on the kitchen counter, face down. A blatant invitation. It was wrong, I knew it was. But the urge to know burned inside me. Old messages seemed innocent enough. Banter with friends, some flirtation with a colleague, nothing too alarming. Yet, driven by a sick fascination, I hit the deleted messages tab. That's where I found it. A conversation laced with inside jokes, pet names I didn't recognize, a shared history I was no part of. The pieces snapped into place with a sickening click. The time spent at the gym wasn't about better health, it was crafting a body for someone else's eyes. The new perfume, the unexplained lipstick stain on the coffee mug, all the subtle shifts I tried to ignore now screamed betrayal. It spilled over into the rest of our lives. I swore I saw it in her eyes as I made a joke during a work dinner, a flash of disdain when it fell flat in front of my colleagues. Her exasperated glance burned hotter than any public embarrassment. It wasn't the joke she hated, it was the man who told it. I was no longer a husband. I was an unwitting audience member in a show where I'd been replaced by a better leading man. And she, the brilliant actress, had made a fool of me without ever uttering a single lie. The calendar stared back at me, dates circled and scribbled over. That weekend, she'd declared she needed some time with the girls. A spa trip, or something else, I didn't pry. A shameful wave of relief washed through me, a few days without the tense silences, the unanswered questions. At least I wouldn't have to pretend anymore. Night fell, heavy in our bedroom. I lay beside her, acutely aware of the chasm between our bodies. We were strangers, performing some elaborate pantomime of marriage. Had we always been like this, or had the shift been so gradual I'd only noticed the end result? We had sex. It wasn't horrible, but it was joyless. Once, our touch spoke a language deeper than words. Now, it was an obligation, a perfunctory act. My mind wandered, desperate to pinpoint the moment the music stopped between us. When did the laughter die? Had it gone quietly, or had I simply stopped listening? The next morning, my old college buddy texted, a barrage of photos from his kid's soccer game. Big smiles, messy ice cream cones, all the simple stuff we'd once taken for granted. A pang hit me, sharper than mere nostalgia. It was envy, not for his life in particular, but for the ease of it. The shared joy I saw in those pictures was missing from my own reflection. That night's fight started with something small. A chore undone, a sarcastic remark that slipped out. Yet, within minutes, it escalated. "You're always so distracted," she spat. The accusation hung heavy. Distracted from her, from us. Distracted by 1,000 unspoken resentments I couldn't even name. Dinner was takeout. Again, Chinese food cartons littered the table, a pathetic substitute for the evenings we used to spend chopping vegetables and laughing over recipe fails. Shared meals had become another box to check, another piece of our normal crumbling away. The truth was laid bare in those small, miserable moments. There was no grand explosion, just the slow, relentless erosion of the us we once were. Those first tendrils of doubt were barely noticeable, like a hairline crack in a window, easy to overlook until it shatters completely. My focus shifted to work, that ambitious project I convinced myself would be the key to a better life for us. Evenings stretched into nights hunched over the computer, spreadsheets blurring into a comforting numbness. Building our future, I'd tell her, guilt-cloaked in noble intentions. But was it our future, or just a comforting escape from a present I couldn't face? Then, she started talking about him. That new guy at work, clever, a sharp dresser, always had something insightful to say. At first, I chalked it up to harmless office admiration. But the mentions became more frequent, a faint change in her voice when she talked about him. A spark I hadn't seen in ages. Sarah gave me a long hug after a minor work victory. It was sisterly, she'd insisted, just old friends celebrating. Yet as I pulled away, that familiar scent of hers clung to my sleeve, fueling an unease I refused to fully acknowledge. Next came my wife's newfound love of running. Odd for a woman who always joked she was allergic to exercise. She'd return breathless and smiling, an unfamiliar glow on her face. It wasn't the flush of endorphins, though. It was something else, a vibrancy she brought back with her from those solitary miles. You know, maybe you should hit the gym, my wife had said once, the words playful but a razor edge lying beneath. Wouldn't want to get complacent, right? The laughter died in my throat. Complacent, unmotivated, a shadow of my former self. That's what I'd become, and she saw it clear as day. These weren't dramatic turning points, not the explosive confrontations movies are made of. It was the slow unraveling, the thousand small cuts that leave you bleeding out before you even realize there's a wound. The promotion was supposed to feel like a triumph. Years of grinding, nights fueled by coffee and stubborn persistence, had finally paid off. Yet, when I broke the news to my wife, her smile seemed rehearsed. Congratulations laced with an undercurrent of something else. Was it disappointment masked by forced enthusiasm? Had she stopped believing in my potential, just when I'd hoped to prove her wrong? Our 10th anniversary loomed, and the excitement in my chest fell out of place. I booked a weekend in that quaint seaside town we always talked about, a throwback to that first carefree summer we'd spent falling in love. But when I told her, her face fell. Oh, right, the anniversary, she murmured, a vague distraction in her eyes. Had my carefully planned surprise become just another inconvenient date to keep track of? The housewarming party for our friends, newly married and sickeningly picture-perfect, became an unintentional torture test. Their playful teasing and shared inside jokes highlighted the stale comfort of our own routine. It was the slow burn of envy, of seeing what we could have been, or more painfully, might never be again. One night out, I'd hoped to recapture a bit of the old magic, that sense of excitement we used to have before everything. Yet, as my wife twirled her drink, her eyes flitting constantly to her phone, I hit a stark realization. I'd become a stranger in her world. The shared references were outdated, the inside jokes didn't land. When was the last time we truly connected? Then came the box. Cleaning out the attic, an old shoebox surfaced, brimming with faded love letters. The playful pet names, the promises whispered in loopy handwriting, it was a ghost of a love untouched by time. An aching contrast to the polite distance between us now. The dress, a beautiful, slinky thing in a shocking shade of red, was like a declaration. Expensive, daring, it screamed for a life of champagne-filled nights and whispered secrets shared in smoky lounges. Yet, she'd bought it without a word, a silent shout into the void between us. Was it a plea for escape from the safe drudgery of our marriage? A statement that I was incapable of giving her the life she craved? There were no explosions, no hurled dishes or tearful accusations. That was what made it so unbearable. Our downfall was happening in polite half-sentences, bored glances, and widening silences. It wasn't the saying of, I love you, that changed, but the not saying of it. Those 3 words, once a casual brushstroke of affection tossed out before leaving for work, now hung heavy in the air, unspoken. The silence of it grew louder each day, a countdown to a goodbye neither of us was brave enough to actually say. Then came the receipt, a silky slip of paper from a boutique I'd never heard of, tucked inside the jumble of her purse. It wasn't the cost, though it was more than I was comfortable with. It was the nagging feeling I couldn't place the item, couldn't recall the occasion when I might have gifted her such a thing. Seed of doubt, planted. My latest obsession offered a fragile sanctuary 3D printing. She laughed it off, called it my nerdy little toys, but it was the first flickering passion I'd felt in what seemed like forever. The buzz of creation, the tangible results, they were a sharp contrast to the nebulous problems growing in our marriage. One night, a text message lit her screen while I was rinsing dishes. Sorry, I missed you, it chirped. It was a man's name I didn't recognize. She fumbled with her phone, flustered, explaining it away as a work contact. But doubt, a tenacious weed, had taken root. We had always dreamed of a puppy, a shared responsibility, a creature to love together. Yet when I brought it up, she'd shut me down. We don't have the time, she'd said, and the finality of it cut deep. Our lives, once filled with shared desires, had narrowed into individual paths running parallel. I came home early one afternoon. The house was unervingly quiet. From down the hall, I heard her voice. Muffled, but intimate, hushed laughter, whispers I was never privy to. As I reached the bedroom, she was hastily ending the call, a flush on her face when she saw me. Then came the locked phone screen. It was a small thing, the kind of password protection most people have. Yet, it felt like building a wall, one more brick of separation in a marriage crumbling from silent blows. And then, the restaurant. She brought it up casually at dinner, some trendy new spot she tried with a friend. Excitement surged through me, a chance for a proper date night, trying something new together. Yet, days later when I suggested it, she stared blankly. New restaurant? What are you talking about? The lie, whether intentional or not, hit like a physical blow. What other conversations were we not having? What other parts of her life had become foreign territory for me? You seem off lately, son, my mother had said over one of her Sunday dinners. She meant it lovingly, but the words rattled around in my head long after the warm casserole and awkward family small talk were forgotten. Preoccupied? I hadn't even realized it myself, but maybe that's what was most troubling. Later that week, I proposed a classic date, that Italian place we both loved. Excuses bloomed. A report due, a friend in town she just had to see. It was a slap of reality, my wife preferred anyone else's company to mine. And it wasn't just one night, it was becoming a pattern disguised as the mundanity of everyday living. Work trips started peppering my schedule more frequently. It was good for my career, everyone said. Yet, a shameful corner of my mind whispered relief at the chance to be away for a few days. To sleep in a quiet hotel room, to make my own dinner choices, to exist without the oppressive weight of what wasn't working at home. She started to change, too. Subtle, at first. Her old jeans and comfy sweaters were replaced by trendier pieces. She fussed over her hair a bit longer, a swipe of brighter lipstick. Good for her, I think, trying to be proud and supportive. But in the hollow echo of my enthusiasm, I felt a pang of something darker. Was she dressing for me, or someone else? In the bedroom, it was a slow fade. Touch that used to be instinctual became hesitant. One night, I reached for her, and she turned away, mumbling a tired apology. It happened again, and again. Each rejection was a nail hammered into the fragile coffin of our physical intimacy. Her pottery class was meant to be a creative outlet. An admirable pursuit, something that was hers. I cheered her on, genuinely wanting her to find a spark somewhere. Yet, on class nights, dinner would be a cold sandwich and a hastily scribbled note. Another brick of time and space inserted between us. Conversation, our once effortless dance of shared jokes and half-finished thoughts, withered into dry discussions. Remember to put the bins out. Did you call the plumber? We were more like weary managers of a failing business than spouses. Then there was Sarah, my new work colleague, a whirlwind of fresh ideas and contagious laughter. When everyone else glazed over at my nerdy spreadsheet jokes, she'd actually smile. It was all innocent, merely a welcome distraction from the joyless grind. Wasn't it? The fact that I even had to ask myself the question was more unsettling than any answer. There I stood, staring at my own reflection, and it was a stranger staring back. Not a grotesque transformation, just the subtle settling of time. A few extra pounds around the middle, a receding hairline begging to be acknowledged. My favorite shirt strained a little at the buttons. I'd always been the sort of comfortable, fit, but seeing it there, undeniable, was unexpectedly jarring. Time to get serious about those runs, I muttered, the promise hanging limply in the air. Money, once a shared battleground conquered through budgeting and a few too many nights of takeout, had become a tightrope walk. An innocuous grocery bill had sparked a disproportionately heated argument. Once, there was unspoken agreement about what was worth it, what wasn't. Now, each expense seemed a referendum on the other's judgment. Sleep became a cruel parody of rest. I'd lie in the half-light, listening to the even cadence of my wife's breaths. Her back was turned towards me, the space between our bodies a chasm even the blankets couldn't bridge. This person, who once fit against me like a puzzle piece, was now an unknowable shape shrouded in darkness. The task of getting her a birthday gift turned into an ordeal. I used to know her so well. An inside joke transformed into a wrapped package, a book chosen with the certainty she'd love it. But now, browsing stores was a minefield. Each scarf, each piece of jewelry, seemed to scream back that I didn't know her tastes, her desires, anymore. Pen_spark. We had settled. It wasn't a bad settling, not a dramatic one. Yet, somewhere along the line, our lives had become a predictable rhythm. Friday takeout, Sunday dog walks, pleasant conversations that rarely dug beneath the surface. It was fine. Yet the memory of that first kiss, the earth-shattering magic of new love, made the fine feel like the faintest of betrayals. Our kisses hadn't stopped, of course. They were frequent, affectionate. But somewhere in that affectionate routine, the wild, breathless magic of